Hi everybody, welcome back once again. Thanks for watching. I am Matthew Morgan. This is the fabulous Eastfield Gunroom YouTube channel. Something a bit different today. We have got a head-to-head between two of arguably the best-selling kings of the mid-range in terms of competition shotgun sporters. There's a mouthful. But before we crack on with our head-to-head, please feel free to hit the pause button, hit like, hit subscribe, because we do appreciate your support. Cast your mind back a few weeks ago and we looked at the fabulous new limited edition Miroku MK38 Competition. Now, I said at the time it shared a lot of features with the already popular, very current Browning Ultra XS Pro. But what got me thinking is these are two guns that come out the same factory. They are very similarly priced. They have got similar features. So what is the actual difference? Which one would I buy and which is best for you? So let's get straight into it. I always like to start with a little bit of history. The Browning Ultra XS Pro was launched back in 2017. It was the latest in a long line of successors of the original GTI action with the deep body design, and it was an out-and-out competition gun like it always has been. The MK38, interestingly enough, was also the evolution of a thoroughbred competition gun, the 3800. MK38 came out initially in 1995 in trap specification. The sporting version with T more chokes, which is essentially what we're looking at today, was launched back in 2003. So what we've got here today is we've got two current versions of the two guns I've mentioned. So we've got the brand new MK38 Competition and we've got a latest specification, I think it's a 21-22 model, Browning Ultra XS Pro. Both in 32-inch, both completely out of the box, both completely untouched. So let's have a look and see what the actual difference between these two guns is. So for simplicity, and it's because of what I always do, we will start off with the action. So let's just recap that these are deep body Browning designs. And what I mean by that, these are both Japanese manufactured, made by Miroku in Japan. And they are not to be confused with the current 725 model, which of course has got a low profile action. If you don't know about the 725, we have done a video. It is on the channel, so do check it out. So we'll put the two guns side by side or over and under if you want to be funny. Okay, and what we've got here is we have got, from a distance, two guns that look virtually identical. So in terms of the cosmetics, the engraving, which let's not forget is important to a lot of people. Some people don't care about it. Some people want something that looks a particular kind of way. It's like that with all things in life. The Browning, quite plain, quite simple. Same engraving design they've used since the 1999 birth conception of this gun, which was the original Ultra XS. All as they've changed is added the word Pro. Still got the same gold border, got the same paisley tie appearance. MK38, stark difference. We have got the grade 3 style action with the foliate engraving, full coverage. Obviously with the new competition, it's picked out in silver, so it's sort of it goes wow without being too in your face like a grade 5, just my opinion. Like I said, a lot more engraving, a lot more going on, and it kind of just, from a distance, looks like it might be more of an all-rounder rather than out-and-out clay gun. Underside, same again. We have got MK38 Limited Competition because that's exactly what it is. We've got an engraved trigger guard. We have got some more bits and pieces picked out in silver on the Miroku. Browning, very, very little, bit more paisley tie. But other than that, nothing going on. If you look at the trigger guards, we have got the traditional Browning bookmark on the Browning, and on the Miroku, just some standard traditional, again, scroll work. And what's quite obvious with this particular gun, the Miroku, I mean, is obviously because you've got that extra bit of floral work picked out in silver, you've got to have some engraving there in the first place to be able to enhance it. Whereas on the Browning, is completely plain, again, in line with what you would expect the norm to be with a competition gun. Both deep body actions. Obviously the holes in the bottom of the action, for those people that don't know, is where the barrels lock in, because that is the full locking bolt system of the Japanese Browning. Looking at the tops of the action, so we've got similar engraving on both top levers, although the Miroku is certainly more ornate, and you've got some engraving down the back strap and also on the selector, whereas as again with the theme, the Browning is completely plain. Just so everybody knows, the internals of these two guns in terms of the action are exactly the same. Same firing pins, same hammers, same tumblers, same springs. It is all exactly the same. If you look at the front edge of them, again, pretty much identical as you look into the action. The only difference I can see here, which you'll see on the close-ups, is there is some proof stampings in the bottom of the Miroku action. Obviously, with these being competition guns, clay shooting shotguns, they are manual safety. Should you want to convert them to auto because you might want to use it for game, I know people use both these models for game shooting. The bits and pieces to do that are in the box. Moving on to the triggers, we've got a standard grade one on the Miroku, which of course is just cosmetic. It's the skinny one. You can of course have different types of triggers on both of these guns, whereas on the Browning, similar gauge thickness of trigger, but it is gold to complement the rest of the bits and pieces on the action. Both adjustable triggers, 3 positions as always, which are denoted by little marks on the side of the rail. If you've not watched the Access Pro video, do check that out because I do talk about how important it is to get it in exactly the right position so you don't damage the trigger block. One final point, because this is the deep body traditional Browning action, I'm going to say, is both of these guns have got inertia operated triggers. If you look at the 725 series of guns, they are mechanical. Okay, so moving away from the action to the all-important barrels. These are both 32-inch tubes. Obviously, I've picked the same model in each barrel length to make it as fair a test and as fair a comparison as possible. Now, the first thing you will notice is, remember, if you have watched the video of the MK38 competition, this is the first Miroku to hit UK shores, really, that's meant for the UK market with ventilated barrels. Whereas Browning, of course, have done it for years. All XSs are vented, all modern 525s are vented, all 725, I'm talking about competition guns now, are vented. So if we look at the actual vents, you can see that the XS Pro has got a lot more of them, okay? So what that means is that with the barrel weighting system, which both these guns come with, you have got more options of where to put the actual barrel weight along the length of the center rib. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Not sure. If you like to fiddle around with stuff, it just gives you another option with the Browning, which you don't have with the Miroku. Now, both guns have got 18.7 bores. Again, all Browning, that are Browning Miroku Winchester, they're Invector Plus choked, all come with overbore barrels, which are 18.7 millimeters. They, as well as the back boring, they are high performance steel shot proofed. Again, because this gun's a couple of years old and this gun's brand new, this is the way we're heading. Everything these days is HP steel shot proof. So not only is it CIP, which is standard performance, it's also high performance. I keep saying high performance proof. In terms of the chamber length, they are both 3-inch chambers because these are guns that can be used for all manner of things. High performance steel shot proof, like I've just said. You could take them goose shooting, whatever. They're not just out and out competition clay guns. There are, for example, guns in the Browning range, the 725 Pro Sport, which is 2 3/4-inch chambers only. Not quite sure what the thinking behind that is, but for what we're talking about today, both these guns, 3-inch chambers. Now, just going back to the vents in the mid-rib, if you look, obviously there's more of them, but incidentally, if you look at the business end, there's actually a slightly longer portion of the midrib removed on the Miroku, which you'd assume wouldn't give it slightly lighter barrels. Now, multi-choke wise, we have got Invector Plus on both of them, Invector Plus extended titanium, which obviously is a much lighter material than stainless steel. On the Browning, so Browning comes complete with 8 titanium chokes, whereas the Miroku comes with 5 extended teagues, steel versus titanium. What I would say is, with the XS Pro, you do get a number of chokes that you're probably not going to use as a sporting shooter. You get full, light full, extra full, whereas with the Miroku, you get more of a standard kind of generic set, cylinder through to full. Engine turning on the Browning, which is interesting. So engine turning, what I mean by just below the barrel wings, which are plain on the Browning, you have got this only a micron thick, but it's a very nice cosmetic finish. Just gives you the feel of a more prestige product, in my opinion. The Miroku is completely plain, although it does have barrel wings. Do you prefer engine turning? Do you prefer barrel wings engraved? Horses for courses. Onto the rib. Now, this is a very interesting point. As I said at the start of the video, the XS Pro is a long line of the successors to the original GTI. Now, that gun had a 13x10 tapered rib, and the rib was actually dovetailed on to the top of the tubes rather than soldered on, where you would get with the traditional, if you like, conventional over and under design. On the Miroku, we've got a standard rib design with a 10mm parallel rib, with a centre bead, with a tram line. With the XS Pro, you do get the tram line, you do get the centre bead, but you have got that wider rib to start with. So what about the weight of the barrels? How do they weigh up against each other? The Browning comes in at 1536, which is 1.536 kilos. The Miroku is 40 grams heavier at 1.576 kilos. So what that essentially means is that the Miroku may be slightly steady, it might be smoother to swing, but let's not forget with both of these guns, you have got the barrel weight facility. You do get a set of barrel weights with both guns, which are 1.3 ounces, so you could easily bring the weight of the excess barrels up to the same as the Miroku if that is a factor for you. Final point I want to make on the barrels is, of course, the cosmetic side of it. Both have the same quality of bluing. It's a deep gloss finish. Again, if you look at something like a 725 Pro Sport, that comes with matte finish barrels. For me personally, I prefer gloss finish barrels. I think they look a lot smarter. But again, that's just my personal preference. So just to recap very quickly, the Miroku's got heavier barrels. It's got less vents in the center rib, and it's got stainless chokes rather than titaniums, and a bit less going on the old cosmetic front. So moving on to the stock. So there's a critical point in terms of fit, without a doubt. And the Ultra XS Pro, I'll start with that one. This gun prior to 2019 had a different adjustable comb system in it. It had a much more inferior, I would say. I did point this out in our adjustable comb video. If you haven't seen it, do check it out. It's cool. The problem was the posts were very short, so you couldn't get a great deal of height. There was just less adjustment than there is in the modern version, which is what we've got in this gun here. So in terms of the adjustable comb system, in these guns now, they are completely identical. So you can get the same amount of adjustment and alteration from either. I believe that Browning quote 3959 in terms of the flat dimensions. That's millimeters for the XS Pro, and it's the exact same for the Miroku. One thing I would say is because of that later system, there is quite a lot of adjustment. So should you want to use this for something like a trap discipline, get it a bit higher in the comb, you should be able to do that with either gun comfortably. So at the back end, this is interesting. With the Miroku, we have got the traditional Michelin tire piece of rubber, which offers no recoil absorption whatsoever, but it is literally just a finisher, okay? And that gives you a 15-inch, which is approximately 390 millimeters length of pull. With the Browning, we've got the Inflex 2 recoil pad system, massively popular, used on the 725, the 525, the Maxus semi-autos. And what that means is it gives you a bit more option in terms of gun fit and adjustment, because they do come supplied with different length ones and also spacers. If you do need to adjust the length of the Miroku, the chances are you're going to have a grind to fit pad put on. However, I would say I'm not a huge fan of the particular Inflex pad because I do find them a little bit soft. If you want to go low recoil, look at either a Patmeyer or something like a Kickies pad. But for what they are, they're good. And of course, the advantage with them is you can swap them with a posi-drive screwdriver. It's as simple as that. So one thing I would say, maybe if you're a taller guy and you want to gun out the box, the XS Pro might just edge it over the Miroku there. Now, grade of the wood, always a hot topic with Browning versus Miroku because of the politics. I always believe that Browning tend to use European walnut, whereas Miroku go American walnut. Now, on the XS Pro, you get grade 4 Turkish-ish oil finish woodwork. Same kind of slightly glossier finish than what you get on the Miroku. Whereas on this Miroku Competition, we have got 4/5, that's the grade, American walnut. You can see looking at them that they are wildly different in terms of their appearance. Some people would prefer that over that. It is very much horses for courses. It's very much personal preference when we're looking at things like cosmetics. Just bear in mind that the density of the wood will change depending on the origin of it. And you could argue that with the American walnut, I would imagine when we weigh these in a second, it will make for a heavier shotgun. If you look at the profile across the top of the comb, there's a very slight difference in that the Miroku is a little bit wider at the rear. Other than that, the cast is exactly the same. The Browning is also available. This is a right-handed gun, but they are available in left-handed. My experience of those is there is very little left-hand actual cast, but you can get these guns with a factory left-hand lever. Miroku are all right-handed levers regardless. Very good strong pieces of wood. There's no fragility there in terms of the Miroku or the Browning because of the head, because these are guns that are designed to be shot. You do need strong woodwork. Coloration, again, you can just see it's typically different. You get this American very red finish in the American walnut with interestingly different colored lines and shapes. Whereas The Browning, I would say, is a bit more uniform in its appearance, in this kind of honey and black kind of setup. Now the checkering, when Browning, or shortly after they changed from that god-awful adjustable comb system in 2019, they came up with the idea of getting rid of the very fine traditional, I would say, checkering and putting this much bigger, almost comical checkering on these guns. Now I, for one, am not a fan. I think it's a great shame. I think it makes it look low cost. Whereas with the Miroku, they have stuck to their guns, pardon the pun, and gone for tradition and just had a much, much finer style of checkering. Dual point on both, but on the Browning, it looks like an eel popping out of a lily pad. Whereas on the Miroku, much more refined, much nicer looking, because it is finer checkering. And if you turn over onto the top with the Miroku, it goes into the back where the comb is, a little bit like you used to get on a B25 D grade where they checker over the top. Whereas the Browning, I believe this is a cost-cutting exercise. It just finishes exactly where you would expect a much lower price shotgun to finish. In terms of feel themselves, they have got exactly the same radius in terms of the pistol grip, no palm swell whatsoever. I just think looking at it, the Miroku is a little tiny bit chunky. Could just be my eyes, could be an illusion in the grip, and it just feels a little bit nicer to me. But again, very much personal preference. In terms of the length of the stock, obviously we talked about the different types of recoil pads. The Miroku has got a fraction more wood on it. So you are looking at a 15-inch length of pull with the Michelin tire on the back, whereas with the Browning and a 20mm Inflex pad, that will give you 15 inches or 390 millimeters approximately. So from that we can kind of deduce the difference in the actual wood is about 1/4 of an inch. That may be something you want to take into consideration if you are a really tall guy and you need a massive extension, because with the Miroku it won't look quite so much of a dog's breakfast as it would do with the Browning. So at the other end of the tree, we have got the Forend. So if we first of all take a look at the actual physical size of the Forend, we've got the Miroku on the bottom and we've got the Browning with the Mickey Mouse checkering on the top. And basically what you can see is that the Miroku is a much more bulbous design. It's got a much fatter beaver tail, if you like, than the Browning, which is more of a kind of a semi-beaver tail. It hasn't got the full groove armada, okay? A bit like the old Berettas from the 1980s or the old Miroku 800. So I'd class that as a semi-beaver tail, whereas the Miroku is a full beaver tail. Interestingly enough as well, the Browning is obviously a slimmer design, but it's also physically longer. So if you're a really tall guy and you've got really long arms, you might want to look at the Browning first because it is, I don't know, maybe 20mm longer in the physical piece of wood. Moving on to the checkering, we have got the continuation on the Miroku of this very pointy Star of Wonder on the outside. Again, a bit like I talked about where the engraving goes over the top of the stock, top of the grip. They've continued it all the way around here, which is a nice touch. Whereas on the Browning, I'm not going to lie, I don't like the style of the checkering. I think it's a bit cheap looking, a bit almost comedy-like. You've just got a pair of Batman's ears at the bottom. And then I quite like the flush bit at the top, I must be honest. I think that's quite good. But the whole checkering design and the style of it just ruins it for me, if I'm honest. In terms of the furniture, with the MK38 Competition, we have got a little bit more like a surfboard made out of leaves on here. A nice bit of engraving, engraved Forend iron as well. And as you'd expect, the continuation of the theme throughout with the Browning has been very little engraving. So we've got a brushed finish here, just with the Browning bookmark on either side of the Forend iron, and nothing, a completely plain, brushed, polished Forend latch on the bottom. If you look inside the Forends in terms of the actual mechanics of it and where the screws are placed, obviously the spring-loaded ejectors, even the little bits that have been carved out with the serial number, that's the only time that these Forends are completely identical. We've looked at the shape is different, the checkering is different, the furniture is different, so ultimately the feel will be different. So in terms of how much these guns weigh and how they balance, let's look at that. So we'll start off with the MK38. Nice positive sounding, dependable clunk that every Browning Miroku owner is familiar with. And we look at the balance. Again, this is a 32-inch gun. They're both 32-inch guns, pretty much on the hinge pin, and that's without the addition of any kind of barrel weight or stock weights currently. Weight, incidentally, is 8 pounds 10 ounce, and this is what's going to shock you next. So we look at the Browning. Now let's not forget, these guns are made in the same factory. They have got the same features. They've almost got the same stock dimensions. Again, a nice positive Browning Miroku clunk. If you've got one of these guns, if you ever own one, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. It just feels right when you open and close these guns. But this bit is going to shock you. So in terms of the balance, it's barrel heavy, it's noticeably barrel heavy. Now this gun, despite being made in the same factory as the Miroku, with very similar stock dimensions, almost identical components, is 8 ounces lighter than the Miroku. So let's just look at that for what it is for a second. Essentially, this gun is going to be, in its raw form, much faster handling. It's going to be faster in the barrels. It's going to be harder to control without the addition of some of those weights, potentially. And what that does is it basically means it's going to be more suitable for certain types of shooting than others. So we've touched briefly on the fact that the Browning might come with extra pads and that both guns come with a barrel balancing system and a stock balancing system. But what else is in the box? Let's have a look. So both boxes on the table, we have got the Miroku and the Browning. Clearly there's a difference. The Browning's got a leather trim on. The Miroku looks a little bit more basic, if that's the right word to use. You can see from my long arms that they've both got combination locks. So we'll flip them over and see what's inside. Both Negrini cases, both got some decals inside which have been painted on, different colours, got the same kind of lining. In essence, they are a very similar box. I would have to say the Browning box just looks and feels a little bit more sturdy if I had to be dropping, you know, a forklift truck on it or something like that. So both guns have got a set of paperwork, some documents with them. With the Browning, we've seen this many times before. This is a proof certificate from Liège in Belgium, okay? So it tells you the boring, it tells you what the gun was proofed at in terms of kg, the barrel weight, which we talked about, and also the barrel length, serial number, etc. So it's like a, you know, an identity card for the gun. Slightly different with the Miroku because we've just got an inspection certificate because they have a different process in terms of export, for example. So what you've got is this is basically a sign-off certificate by the head man at Miroku to say he's happy with the gun, he's happy that it's been proved, blah-de-blah-de-blah. Right, warranty. Here in the UK, and I'll talk about the UK because this is where we are, 3 years on a Miroku, which includes the woodwork, which is great because, you know, very few manufacturers will offer that on a product, certainly here in the UK, and the action and the barrels and all that kind of stuff. The Browning is identical. You get 3 years warranty across the board. However, they claim to offer a 10-year warranty on the action, but don't be fooled by that. It's not the working parts of the action, it's just the action itself. And in all fairness, you've got more chance of finding Bart Simpson in your cat flap than actually cracking an action on a shotgun. Now, chokes, this is a very interesting one because we've talked about the fact that Browning's titanium, the Miroku comes with stainless, although you can change them about. They're Invector Plus. They will will accommodate any kind of Invector Plus choke. Whereas a standard with the Miroku, we get 5 Invector Plus stainless steel chokes. Whereas with the Browning, you get the titanium chokes. Just going back to the barrel weights, remember the Browning was 8 ounces lighter than the Miroku. So should you want a heavier gun than the Browning in its standard form, put some heavier chokes in, put some stainless steel, you know, swap out the titanium ones, and that'll give you that extra bit of weight. Top tip from me. Now, interesting with the Browning, you get 8 of these chokes, but the reality of it is you're probably never going to use 3 or 4 of them, which I think is a massive waste of time and effort from Browning's part because it's a sporting shotgun and they've put a load of chokes in which are dedicated trap chokes. So, you know, when you're spending your money and choosing one of these guns, that is something you need to take into consideration because the chances are, from my experience, they won't swap one you're never going to use for one that you will. Both got a choke key. With the Browning, you have got these castellations on the key and the notches in the top of the key, so you get a good positive lockup when you're removing and inserting, shall we say. Whereas with the Teagues that come with the Miroku, you have got this friction key. Remember that you could only take a Teague choke key out or put it in with a Teague friction key or maybe just finger type, but I would always recommend you use a proper key. So stock weight systems, one for the Miroku, one for the Browning, each are marked up with their respective logos, which is quite a cool touch. And of course you get all the various Allen keys for adjusting the stock, adjusting the trigger, that kind of stuff. One thing you do get with the XS Pro, although it's not with this particular gun, is you do get 2 spare triggers as well. You get the sort of the slightly curved one and also the checkered one. Again, it's entirely up to you what you prefer if you want to swap the triggers out. Incidentally, remember these guns are made in the same factory, you've got the same internal parts. You could put an XS Pro onto an MK38 trigger block and vice versa. With the Browning, you also get a couple of recoil pads and spacers to obviously lengthen it, shorten, whatever. The Miroku is fixed. There is no option for that. We talked about a grind to fit pad should you want it altering. You do, however, get with both guns a stock bolt tool, which is a very useful piece of kit. And to finish off the Browning, you also get a set of these impregnated kind of barrel sock pajama things, which you don't get with the Miroku. And you can actually spray these with Leisure gun oil. Other gun sprays are available, and it will kind of keep the gun safe in storage. So to summarize, we have looked at the guns in terms of their bare components. We have looked at things like barrel weights and how many bloody holes there are in the barrels. We have gone through these guns top to bottom. But which one would I buy and why? And more importantly, what might be best suited to you? So I don't like to talk about prices on this channel, but the Ultra XS Pro, the Browning, is about 10 to 15% more expensive here in the UK than the Miroku. And when you actually look at what you get for that, you get some chokes you're probably not going to use. You get a checkering style, which is not for everybody. You know, it's away from the norm. The Miroku is a traditional checkering style, which more people will be familiar with and is probably less offensive to most. That's just my opinion. You do get certain things like the recoil pad and the extra triggers, but there's enough going on in the Miroku from a gun fitting point of view. It's already very adaptable, very versatile, very universal. And I think for me, the ultimate is the fact that it comes down to the fact that the Browning, I believe, is a little bit too light. I think you're going to have to put the weights in it to get it to where you want it to be in terms of performance of a 32-inch sporting gun, whereas the Miroku out the box has got it all, and then you can add to it in terms of the balance and changing the balance to your kind of preference. So if it was me, if it was my money, I would buy the Miroku. Don't get me wrong, the Browning's a great gun. Sam Green, top British shot, won various competitions over the last couple of years with this gun. It's fantastic. But the idea of this video was to take two guns which there is no doubt people looking at spending this kind of price will be looking at both of them and they'll be wondering what the differences are. So we've looked at the specifications, we've looked at everything that comes with it, the subtle differences, because let's not forget, for the start of the video, these guns come out of the same factory. They are manufactured by the same people. So what do you think? Let us know in the comments. You might like the engraving of the Miroku, but you might prefer the checkering on the Browning. As I did say, these guns are very modular. You could even build your own gun to spec if you wanted to. You have to buy two guns in the first place, of course, but still. So that has been the Eastfield Gunroom head-to-head between the Browning Ultra XS Pro and the all-new Miroku MK38 Competition. Tell us what you think. Tell us your feelings. We want to know your preferences for each gun because everyone's different. If you've got any questions about either of the guns, please get in touch with me directly. Details are on the screen. Don't forget to check out the website. Don't forget to like and subscribe and maybe recommend the channel to other shooting friends. And from me and the kings of the mid-range, I'll see you next time.